Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking a really crucial mission, diving deep into the nutritional landscape of those early years. You know, the ones defined by rapidly developing independence and, frankly, astonishing demands, toddler and preschooler nutrition. If you are navigating that I do it phase, that messy, challenging, yet absolutely critical stage of human development, well, this deep dive is definitely your guide.
It really is.
Our goal today is to unpack the core necessities of this time. Things like monitoring that unique slowing of growth, understand the emergence of often unpredictable eating behaviors.
Yeah, definitely unpredictable.
Identifying those critical nutrient requirements, and importantly, getting ahead of common health concerns for children aged 1 to 5. We're drawing exclusively from expert nutritional sources here to give you the most detailed and actionable insights.
And this really is a foundational period. We are essentially looking at two distinct phases in this one deep dive. First, you've got the toddler group, that's 1 to 3 years old. That's where you see this explosion in mobility and those early attempts at self-feeding and really asserting control.
The age of exploration, yeah. Often face first into the carpet, I think.
Exactly. Then you have the preschool age children, that's 3 to 5 years old. Here, autonomy kind of stabilizes a bit, and they start experiencing broader social structures like daycare or pre-K.
Okay.
But the underlying constant across both stages is this. While that furious growth rate of infancy totally ends, adequate nutrition remains absolutely non-negotiable.
Oh.
Undernutrition during these specific years has really profound and often irreversible long-term impacts, particularly on cognitive development. That's key.
Let's unpack that slowdown then, because I think it's often the first thing that confuses parents, right? They spend 12 months watching a baby practically triple their weight, and then suddenly it feels like the feeding frenzy just stops.
Wow. Yeah, the growth velocity takes a really dramatic turn. After that first year, it shifts to a much slower, steadier pace. Toddlers average a gain of only about 8 ounces. That's less than 1/4 of a kilogram per month.
Wow, only 8 ounces.
Yeah, and gain about 0.4 inches in height per month. Then, when they hit the preschool years, it slows down even further. It settles at an average annual gain of just 4.4 pounds and maybe 2.75 inches.
So if you, listening, feel like your toddler has decided surviving on, I don't know, 1 chicken nugget and half an apple for a whole day is enough, you are actually seeing a completely normal reflection of that decreased metabolic demand. That's what you're saying.
That's absolutely right. The decrease in appetite is purely physiological. It's driven by the fact that their body just isn't pouring all its energy into tripling its mass anymore.
Okay.
So reassuring parents that this is healthy development, that's really key.
Right. Now, tracking this slower, steady growth, it requires very specific measurement techniques, and they change right at the 2-year mark. Can you walk us through the proper protocols?
Yeah, the measurement protocols are highly specific. For children less than 2 years old, they need to be weighed nude or just in a diaper.
Okay.
And we must measure recumbent length, that is, the child lying down. It actually requires 2 people for precision.
2 people, wow.
Up to this age, we use the WHO growth charts. These are the international standards showing how healthy children should grow, ideally.
Okay. And what shifts it to? Why the change?
Well, at 2 years and older, we transition to measuring stature, so that's standing height without shoes, of course.
Right.
And we start using the CDC growth charts. These function more as a national reference, showing how children are growing, specifically in the U.S.
Okay, so WHO is the ideal, CDC is the reality check for the U.S.
Kind of, yeah. And crucially, at age 2, we introduce the main screening tool for body fat estimation, the BMI-for-age percentile.
BMI. We use percentiles here because a child's body mass index naturally fluctuates quite wildly during these early years, doesn't it?
It does.
So what are the clinical definitions we should know?
Okay, so underweight is below the 5th percentile. Overweight falls between the 85th and 94th percentile. And obesity is defined as being at or above the 95th percentile.
Got it.
But here is where it gets really interesting, actually. We have to watch for something called the BMI rebound.
The BMI rebound.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the predictive power of that rebound you mentioned. Explain what happens there.
Yeah, so BMI naturally drops to its lowest point during the preschool years, usually between ages 4 and 6, roughly.
Okay.
That lowest point is the rebound, after which BMI naturally begins to increase again into adulthood. Now, if that rebound happens prematurely, say before age 4, it's one of the clearest, earliest indicators we have that the child's body might already be setting a pattern for adult obesity risk.
Wow.
It's critical predictive data, really important to track.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the table then. That transition, from purees to family meals, it seems heavily dependent on developing motor skills, all while the child is demanding more independence.
Oh, absolutely. That connection between motor skills and independence is like a constant tightrope walk for parents.
Yeah.
By 12 to 18 months, toddlers develop that refined pincer grasp, think picking up a single cooked pea.
Right. Tiny things.
Exactly. And they learn the rotary sort of side-to-side chewing movements. Then, by 18 to 24 months, their rotary chew is pretty well developed, meaning they can handle multiple textures, like meats and raw fruits.
But that fierce independence, it often directly clashes with a high choking risk, right? Especially when they're just focused on shoveling food in themselves. What are the crucial hazards parents need to watch out for?
Yeah, adult supervision remains absolutely mandatory, no question. We must avoid hard candy, popcorn, nuts, and specifically whole grapes and hot dogs.
Ah, yeah.
Those should never be given whole to children under 2. Hot dogs in particular, because of their shape, they must be cut lengthwise first and then into small bites. It's critical.
Lengthwise, then small bites.
Yep.
Got it. This is also the stage, I think, where parents encounter the dreaded food jags.
Oh,
So when my 4-year-old decides that, scientifically, the only acceptable shade of green is broccoli and flat out rejects peas for 3 weeks solid, that's a food jag.
that's exactly it. There are these prolonged periods of refusing foods they previously liked. It's usually linked to their emerging need for control and ritual. They like things the same.
Right.
The strategy isn't to engage in some big battle of wills. It's really about consistent, repeated exposure.
Wow.
Serve the new or the rejected food alongside familiar favorites, knowing it often takes like 8 to 10 exposures before a child might accept a new food. Patience is key.
8 to 10 times. Wow. And speaking of parental control, or maybe lack thereof, parents sometimes tend to serve huge portions, maybe influenced by what they eat. What's the actual rule of thumb for serving size for these little guys?
Yeah, that's a common issue. The simple, best rule of thumb is 1 tablespoon of food per year of age.
1 tablespoon per year.
That's it. So for a 2-year-old, that's maybe 2 small spoons of, say, peas, 2 small spoons of chicken.
Honestly, for a perhaps slightly panicked parent, 2 small spoons sounds completely inadequate. How do we trust that tiny portion is actually enough?
Well, that brings us to probably the most important point about this age group, their innate control. Children actually have an incredible innate ability to adjust their caloric intake to meet their energy needs, usually over the course of about a week.
A week, okay.
Yeah, their intake can fluctuate wildly day-to-day, feast one day, famine the next, it feels like. But they self-regulate over time if we let them.
So if we need to trust them to manage how much they eat, let's talk about the parent's core job then. Ensuring they have access to what they need, nutrient-wise, and protecting that innate ability you mentioned.
Precisely. Because this innate self-regulatory mechanism, it's actually quite fragile. It can be severely diminished by parental feeding practices that focus on external cues, not internal ones.
Like what?
Like if you coerce them to clean your plate or use food as a reward or punishment or consistently serve overwhelming portion sizes, the child starts listening to the adult or the portion size instead of their own internal hunger and satiety signals. And research shows that parental restriction of highly palatable foods like sweets might actually backfire and promote the desire and consumption of those forbidden foods later on.
Interesting. Okay, shifting to the science of those needs. The dietary reference intakes, the DRIs, they're set for specific age ranges, 1-3 years and 4-8 years. What's unique about calculating their calorie needs now compared to infancy?
Well, starting at age 3, the estimated energy requirement, EER calculation, suddenly has to include the physical activity level, PAL.
PA.
Yes. We have to factor in this activity number because, well, they're constantly moving and exploring. It's where the science finally catches up to the reality of your typical restless 3-year-old.
Makes sense. And what about protein intake? Is that usually a concern?
Generally, no. Protein requirements, which are around 1.1 grams per kilogram per day for the 1-3-year-olds, are usually easily met by typical American diets, assuming their overall energy intake is sufficient. Enough calories has a protein-sparing effect.
Oh.
The real focus, honestly, should be on micronutrients, where deficiencies are much more pervasive in this age group.
Right. Which are the big 4 or 5 deficiency risks we should be aware of?
Iron, calcium, zinc, and vitamins D and E. Those are the main ones. Iron is particularly critical. The RDA is 7 milligrams per day for the 1-3-year-olds.
7 milligrams.
And calcium is also vital, for setting the stage for achieving peak bone mass later in life. That requires 700 milligrams per day for the 1-3 group, and it jumps to 1,000 milligrams for the older 4-8 group.
Okay, 700, then 1,000. Let's prioritize the most prevalent nutritional problem you mentioned, iron deficiency anemia.
Yes, it unfortunately remains the most common nutritional problem globally and here in the U.S., particularly affecting children between 9 and 18 months old.
And the impact.
The impact is staggering, really. It causes long-term, often lasting delays in cognitive development and behavioral disturbances. It's serious.
So what's the single most effective prevention tactic parents can implement? Like, today?
Limit milk intake? Seriously.
Yeah.
The CDC recommends that children 1 to 5 years of age should drink no more than 24 ounces, that's 3 8-ounce cups of cow's milk, goat's milk, or soy milk daily.
No more than 24 ounces. Why is that?
Because excessive milk intake is actually quite low in iron, and it physically displaces the consumption of other iron-rich foods in their limited stomach capacity.
Oh, okay. Fills them up on the wrong thing.
Exactly. Now, if anemia is confirmed through testing, treatment usually involves prescribed iron drops and, of course, increasing consumption of lean meat, fish, poultry, and importantly, vitamin C sources alongside iron-rich plant foods to boost absorption.
Got it. Another issue that can cause significant harm, maybe less talked about than iron, is early childhood caries, or ECC, dental decay.
Yes, ECC. It's primarily caused by the habitual use of a bottle, or, importantly, even those no-spill sippy cups containing milk or juice, especially if the child falls asleep while drinking it or sips on it frequently throughout the day.
Why is that so bad?
Those carbohydrate-containing fluids pool against the upper front teeth, creating a perfect environment for bacteria and leading to rapid decay. It's also why fluoride is so important, either from fluoridated tap water or supplements if needed.
Right.
But we must caution against excessive fluoride intake too, which can cause fluorosis, that permanent staining on the teeth. It's a balance.
Okay, balance is key. And let's quickly touch on constipation before we move to an environmental risk. Common issue.
Yes, constipation is quite common, but usually preventable with adequate fluid intake and age-appropriate fiber. That's about 19 grams per day for the 1-3-year-olds and 25 grams for the 4-8-year-olds.
Okay.
We do caution against excessive fiber, though, because too much can paradoxically reduce the energy density of their diet and actually decrease mineral absorption. So again, balance.
Right. Not too little, not too much. Finally, a major environmental threat that, fascinatingly, nutrition plays a defensive role against: elevated blood lead levels.
This is such a serious public health issue, primarily linked to exposure to leaded chips and dust from deteriorating lead-based paint, especially in housing built before 1978.
And the danger.
Even quite low-level exposure is associated with measurable decreases in IQ and impaired cognitive abilities. The CDC recently lowered the blood lead reference value significantly, down to just 3.5 micrograms per deciliter, reflecting the concern.
Wow, 3.5.
Yeah. But what's really astonishing here is the nutritional defense aspect. Preventing iron deficiency and ensuring adequate intake of calcium and vitamin C can literally offer a measure of protection against the body absorbing the lead and mitigating some of its damaging effects, especially on the brain.
That's incredible. Nutrition is defense. Okay, moving to longer-term health, we absolutely must discuss prevention behaviors for cardiovascular disease and, of course, obesity. What's the current snapshot of obesity prevalence in this young age group?
Well, the prevalence of obesity, that's BMI at or above the 95th percentile, is concerningly high. It's around 12.7% among children aged 2 to 5 years in the U.S.
12.7%.
Yes. And given that treatment is complex and often difficult, prevention is always the preferred approach.
So experts have compiled a crucial list of targeted behaviors for parents. What are the key items on that list for prevention?
This list is highly actionable, which is great. Key things include limiting sugar-sweetened beverages, a big one, encouraging fruits and vegetables, limiting screen time to a maximum of 2 hours per day with absolutely none in bedroom.
None in bedrooms, okay.
Eating breakfast daily is surprisingly important. And crucially, limiting portion sizes and reducing fast food dining. Physical activity is also non-negotiable here.
How much activity?
Young children need moderate to vigorous activity for at least 60 minutes daily. And for preschoolers, that includes active play several times throughout the day, just running around, basically.
Got it. 60 minutes total. Now, if a child aged 2 to 5 does present with obesity, the treatment goal is radically different than for an adult, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. For this age group, the goal is often weight maintenance while they continue to gain height.
Grow into their weight, essentially.
Exactly. This naturally lowers the BMI percentile over time without drastic measures. If weight loss is needed, we aim for very gradual loss, maybe not exceeding 1 pound per month. Treatment is complex and usually follows a staged approach, starting with basic lifestyle counseling called Prevention Plus, and potentially moving up to structured weight management or even a comprehensive multidisciplinary intervention if needed.
Okay, that makes sense. And since we know atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, actually begins way back in childhood, let's quickly discuss fat intake.
Right. Dietary fat remains vital for energy and absorbing those fat-soluble vitamins during this period, but the type and amount recommendations shift slightly as they get older.
Okay.
The acceptable macronutrient distribution range, the AMDR for total fat, is 30 to 40% of total calories for children 1-3 years.
30 to 40%.
Then that range narrows just a bit to 25 to 35% for children aged 4-18 years. And within that, saturated fat intake should definitely be reduced, particularly in children considered high risk for cardiovascular issues, aiming for less than 7% of total calories from saturated fat.
Less than 7%. Okay. To bring this all together then, let's look at the overarching dietary guidance and also the necessary support systems that exist. What's the primary advice coming from something like the My Plate guidance?
The core message is variety. Eating a wide variety of foods is key, and importantly, parents modeling those healthy habits themselves.
Right, lead by example.
Exactly. My Plate emphasizes filling half the plate with fruits and vegetables, ensuring at least half of their grains are whole grains, and making that switch to fat-free or low-fat milk after age 2.
Okay, speaking of fluids, water is obviously the best choice, but realistically, how much juice and how many sugary drinks are kids in this age group actually consuming?
Yeah, the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages is still quite significant, unfortunately. It contributes about 7.3% of total calorie intake for this age group on average.
Wow.
Juice needs to be severely limited. 4 ounces or less per day for the 1-3-year-olds, and maybe 4 to 6 ounces max for the 4-6-year-olds. Really, water should be the primary thirst quencher offered frequently.
Good reminder. What if a family is following a vegetarian or maybe even a vegan lifestyle? Can young children still meet all their nutritional needs?
They absolutely can thrive, yes. But these diets require really intelligent planning and attention to detail. Vegan diets especially need to include energy-dense foods, things like nut butters, avocados, fortified plant milks, and yogurts, to ensure they get enough calories.
No.
And special care must be paid to ensuring adequate intake of critical nutrients often found primarily in animal products. That's vitamin B12, vitamin D, zinc, iron, calcium, and omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA. Supplementation is often necessary.
Okay, so possible, but needs careful planning. Finally, we have to acknowledge that not all families have equal access to nutritious food. What public resources are out there to support nutrition access for this crucial age group?
Yes, that's vital. 3 programs are particularly important. WIC, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, provides food assistance, nutrition education, and health screening for nutritionally at-risk, low-income infants and children up to age 5.
Okay, WIC.
Then there's SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly food stamps. This helps low-income households buy food to improve overall food security.
Right, SNAP.
And finally, Head Start and Early Head Start. These are comprehensive child development programs for economically disadvantaged families, serving children from birth up to age 5. They include robust nutritional components like meals and education.
Those sound like incredibly important resources. Well, this has been a really complete picture of this crucial developmental stage. We've learned that growth monitoring is precise. It actually changes at age 2. That the child's innate ability to self-regulate food intake is real, but fragile and easily overridden by external pressures.
Yeah, very fragile.
And that key prevention efforts need to focus on things like iron deficiency, protecting against lead exposure, and establishing those early healthy habits to help prevent chronic conditions like obesity down the road.
Exactly. And we understand now that by late preschool age, children are already starting to listen more closely to those external cues, like the sheer size of the portion served on their plate, than they are to their own internal hunger signals. Which really raises an important final question for you, the parent or guardian listening, to maybe consider. Given that strong correlation we see between early parental restriction or pressure around food and a child's potentially negative self-evaluation about eating later, how do we best empower parents to foster a relationship with food that's based on trusting the child's natural satiety cues without unintentionally creating food fear or conflict at the dinner table?
That is a vital question for any family table indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into toddler and preschooler nutrition.